Shalom, Erev Tov לכולם. For 30 years, I served in combat units in the IDF. At first, as member of the secret crack Sayeret Matkal unit, and the remaining 27 years as a fighter pilot and colonel in the Air Force. I took part in operations by foot, deep in enemy country, and commanded numerous air operations in skies above them. Many of them quite daring. I was well aware of the dangers and always cognizant that Israel enemies will make every effort to harm me and my bodies. However, I never once imagined that one day the dangers lying in wait for me would come right from the heart of my very own people. You know, Chaverim, twice in the history of our nation, we lost our short independence, both lasting less than 80 years. And on each of those occasions, it happened because of Milchemet Achim, civil war between us, between ourselves. And that, friends, is the most significant challenge facing the citizens of the State of Israel today. We simply have to meet this challenge, and we can. Let me thank you for inviting me to speak to you today. It really is a great honor, and I am grateful to share with you at this important conference. We in Israel find ourselves in something of complicated political period. A month ago, elections were held for the fifth time in less than 4 years. This time, unlike previous ones, a clear outcome was reached. Although I am on the losing side, I take this opportunity at the very beginning of my words to wish the new government much success. We have no other country. In April, a year and a half ago, Israel went to the polls for the fourth time after 3 rounds of elections in which no clear outcomes was attained. When the results were published, we realized that the fourth round also ended in a tie. It was clear that if each party dug in its own position and campaign promises, we were just as likely to find ourselves in yet another election campaign. We were dealing with the corona epidemic. The country was running a growing deficit and saw a dramatic spike in unemployment. This at a time of military confrontation with Hamas in Gaza, the outcome of which was violent riots on the part of Israeli Arabs, mainly in central Jewish and Arab population cities. Riots and unrest, the likes of which we have not experienced since the establishment of the state. Benjamin Netanyahu's attempt to form a coalition together with the Arab Yamina Party, led by Mansour Abbas, failed, and the ball passed into the hands of Netanyahu opponents. So we found ourselves in a very awkward moment. A decision of historical significance was called for. We had to put an end to an endless round of elections. They amplified and deepened the rifts and hatred among the people. This would mean taking the brave step of forming a government with political parties with whom we have a contradictory ideology. A coalition in which, for the first time, an Arab party will take an active part. If a year and a half ago, someone would have said to me that I would be serving minister in a government based on coalition in which an Arab party was a member, I would have thought they were pulling my leg. While all the right-wing parties, including mine, completely ruled out any possibility of cooperation with the Arab parties, it was Netanyahu who noticed that a religious Muslim leader had risen among the ranks and was carving a novel path of cooperation with the Zionist hegemony. In fact, Bibi made it kosher. Friends, this is a move with the potential to have dramatic effect on the future of Medinat Israel. For an Israeli Arab leader, a religious Muslim, actively made the choice to acknowledge the fact that the State of Israel is Jewish and democratic. He made a point on concentrating on the civil requirements of millions of Arab Israeli citizens instead of focusing on the Palestinian national struggle. Even after the fall of the previous government, I still believe that Mansour Abbas and his party herald a significant and fresh approach to the relations between the Arab citizens of Israel and the State of Israel. We must jump at the opportunity in this process. I hope that the new government will find a way to continue this, even though, sadly, it doesn't appear that they will. The government established by former Prime Minister Bennett included parties from the entire political spectrum, right, left, and center, and as mentioned, the Arabs as well. We were all quite clear as to the others' sensitivities. And with goodwill and positive attitude, we got on with the job of governing and made great progress. Needless to say that the last year was the quietest in the south of the country for many years, a year in which we moved to positive growth rate of 8%, reduced unemployment radically, erased the massive deficit, and managed to keep inflation low, and much, much more. To an outside observer, the topic of religious services may seem marginal and boring. However, anyone who understands a thing or two about the State of Israel knows that religion and state relations are unfortunately the source of most of our internal strife and the number one cause of the fall of governments. Yes, even our government fell in the end because of a stupid and irrelevant dispute over the right to bring chametz, bread, into hospitals on Pesach. Tragically, instead of Judaism, the wonderful gift God gave us, being the glue that binds us together, it developed into the primary cause over which we constantly fight. When I realized that I was about to be appointed a minister in the government, I turned to Prime Minister-designated Naftali Bennett and asked him to give me the Ministry of Religious Affairs. For those who are not familiar with Bennett's and mine's shared history, I should point out that we served together in the same team in the elite unit Sayeret Matkal. In fact, we have been close friends for over 30 years. He thought I was crazy. What does a colonel in the Air Force who commanded 2 F-16 squadrons and was a fighter in crack unit have to busy himself with religious services, he asked. Precisely because of this, I answered him. Precisely because on the one hand, I am committed religiously, observe halakha, and on the other hand, I have spent my entire adult life in serving with people, the vast majority of whom are completely secular. I believe that someone with my life experience can remedy these disputes. I thought, and I still do, that in matter of Judaism, broad agreements are far preferable than to political decisions that have an element of coercion. I believe that the way in which most ultra-Orthodox and religious members of the Knesset have tried to preserve the Jewish identity of the state, though through religious legislation, has caused untold damage. For example, many of my friends in the military wish to have Jewish chuppah ceremony, but are not prepared to go through the rabbinate. They want Judaism, but they can't abide the state of the rabbinical establishment. When I entered the office, I outlined 3 main issues that I wanted to deal with: kashrut, integration of women in religious services, and conversion. The kosher supervision system was old and corrupt. It was causing people to eat non-kosher food and was a mess. In a quick move, I opened the kashrut market to competition under the regulation and supervision of the chief rabbinate. As far as the second issue, bringing women into senior position in the religious services, I can say that as someone who came from the Air Force, where female aircrew fighters serve, a number of them in senior commanded positions, I was troubled to discover that there wasn't a single woman in significant position in the religious services. Happily, I was able to appoint quite a few quality individuals to significant positions. The third issue, that of conversion, is one that I was unable to complete before the fall of the government. We have about 500,000 citizens living in the State of Israel today who are defined as having no religion. Most of them are immigrants from the former Soviet Union who immigrated in accordance with the eligibility under the law of return. But according to halacha, they are not Jewish. They are amazing people. We meet them everywhere, in the army, while studying at the university, at work. Some of the best soldiers I commanded bore that definition. I will not go into the reasons, but the conversion system of the State of Israel fails to effectively remedy the situation. In practice, only about 3,000 people convert each year. It's not enough. I knew that I was entering a minefield in which everyone who had come before me had been under heavy fire, including well-regarded rabbis who dared to attempt to solve these matters. Despite the support of great and significant rabbis, I was labeled by extremists as destroyer of Judaism. Outstandingly, for the first time since the days Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin was murdered, I was decreed a rodef, a pursuer, an ancient religious ruling permitting people to harm me. Political leaders barred me from synagogues, and there were rabbis who took pride into not serving me a glass of water or refraining from shaking my outstretched hand. Pretty soon, I was assigned bodyguard 24 hours a day. For 30 years, I was a fighter in the IDF. I have crossed borders numerous times and have taken into account the dangers. I never imagined that one day the dangers that would lie in wait for me will be from my own people. The struggle on the issue I promoted was full of vitriol from the part of the opposition, as were almost all the issues our government dealt with. We faced a poison machine that spread fake news and lies about the government's actions. For example, problems of governance in Arab society and the wave of terrorist attack, which although lighter than experienced before, were attributed to the coalition composition of the government and to the apparent weakness resulting from submission to the Arabs and the leftist parties. As a minister who sat in the security cabinet in security discussions, I can testify that the opposite is true. This government acted with more determination and operational initiative than previous governments, and never, not a single security decision was influenced by the coalition structure. Our opposition was telling lies and spreading disinformation. In the elections held about a month ago, a clear decision was reached. The people had their say and chose Benjamin Netanyahu to form the government. A dominant player in the coalition will be a political party, the leader of which harnessed the wave of terror and nationalist crime to political benefit quite successfully. I hear voices in the world that see the rise of this party power as a threatening sign of Israeli society becoming racist and hateful of foreigners and minorities. I would not be in a hurry to jump to such conclusions. In the face of the wave of populism and shallow discourse sweeping the world, which in my view stems mainly from the form of discourse on social networks, even in Israel, large sections of the public are happy with populist slogans and militant statements. They think that there is some kind of magic solution to the situation. In the election results, I see a failure of ourselves, the more moderate leaders, to convey to the public a message of moderation and complexity. We fail to explain to the public that sometimes complex problems don't necessarily have simple solutions. Our democracy in Israel is so important. We have to guard it so that we can continue to live together despite differences of opinion. We are bound also to accept the voters' decision even when we don't like it. Ben Gvir, the leader of the Jewish Power Party, claims that he has changed and become more moderate. Whether we like it or not, he's going to be a minister in the Israeli government. He has a chance to prove himself to all of us. Aside from the existing advantage in that there is finally a clear decision and, on the face of it, we are expected to have a period of political stability, there are certainly a number of issues about which I am concerned when hearing the aspiration of the leaders of the coalition parties. As a right-wing person, I also think that the current balance between the three authorities is not as equitable enough. But I am afraid that in the current political climate in Israel, when the Prime Minister's trial hangs over everything, changes that the coalition leaders are seeking to introduce could give absolute power to the Knesset and damage the delicate balance required between the Knesset and the courts. In matter of religion and state, I fear that the partners in the coalition will want to erase all my achievements and once again return to the same paralyzing status quo, alienating Jews from Judaism. In political and security matters, I sincerely pray to God that when the government discusses the proposals of its members that were promised in the election campaign, they will act with the responsibility required of those whose decisions may send our children to war. They will find out pretty quickly that crass statements that can be sounded when you are in the opposition are not so simple to actualize when the responsibility for the safety of Israeli citizens and soldiers is in one's hands. I can testify to this from my personal experience. I am aware that many of the Jews of the United States are concerned about this new government. I say to you that taking everything into account, we are one people and we have no other country. No one has the privilege of being broiges, being angry with the state. We live in a generation of redemption. For 2,000 years, our ancestors dreamed that we would reach this moment. I am wholly convinced that my grandmother's grandfather, who died in the ramp at Auschwitz, and my grandfather's father, who was killed in the gas chambers in Auschwitz, just before returning their soul to God, they pray that we all repeat every day. I believe with complete faith in the coming of the Messiah. אני מאמין באמונה שלמה בביאת המשיח. In their wildest dreams, they could never have imagined the blessing of what we have now, a sovereign Jewish state of our own, a country that is a regional power with strong army, a country with thousands of Torah students, a country that is one of the leaders in the world in high-tech, industry, agriculture, medicine, law, and a lot more. A country that is a Western democracy, where even in times of political upheaval, the changing of government takes place in an orderly manner according to the decision of the people. We are living our ancestors' prayers and dreams. We have no other country, we have a great country. And we are one people, each of us doing their part to look after one another. Thank you.